John, I don't know what the
You bleeped yourself, Terry?
I did.
What the mother are you talking about anymore? I don't understand what you'd be talking about.
Does he look like a bit?
Welcome back to another episode of the EMS Wizard podcast. I have Walter, John, and Terry with me, and my fellow reoccurring guest, Kathia. Good to see you guys. Been a while.
It's been a while.
Hey, Mark.
Where have y'all been?
Good song.
Hey, Mark, we get to add another guest with us.
I know the guests outnumber
to the Terrence Wilson show.
I think it's expanded beyond a show. He's beaming with pride over there with his t-shirt.
Is it Sheehy Wilson or is it Wilson Sheehy? That's what I want to know.
Yes.
Who's wearing it?
It's really no contest. I know that America has been perplexed over the last several weeks and probably in the weeks to come. They were really looking forward to seeing a lot of politics all in their face and stuff and having to make a choice as to.
There's a lot of confusion right now in the world.
But we've kind of ripped that confusion right out. I mean, it took away the mystery, so we can move on to the next thing.
I mean, there's a lot of confusion in the world, but we make it more confusing.
The love of a best friend will prevail.
I just think we can probably answer all of these concerns that come up that they want to spend their time talking about on TV or on these different news affiliates. We can fix this stuff like in one meeting on the back patio in Asheville or Wilmington, and you know it's true. Oh, it's true.
Y'all are gonna get one. Y'all are gonna get like 10 votes.
Girl, it's true.
I can't wait to see that. I can't wait to see that on national TV. I cannot wait to see that on national TV.
They won't show up. We invite them. I said, come to Reidsville, North Carolina, and they said no.
They don't. No, they're not. Yeah.
Invite them to the patio at Asheville.
100% won't do that either because I'm a little skeptical about going out to Asheville myself. But
they're intimidated. They're intimidated because they know the reach that we have. They know the network that we have, and
it's power.
Yeah. There's a lot of things happening, and I'm just it's like a switch when I put that hat on. Just saying.
Maybe you should have wore the hat tonight.
Where is the hat?
It's taken an episode off.
Being cleaned and pressed.
There are the glasses.
Well, that might make a special guest appearance later.
You know, one of the things I'm running on, one of the ticket things that I'm running on is I want to have a discussion is I was talking to some of the folks the other day in EMS, actually that were not in EMS, and they had a question. And they were like, is EMS vulgar? And I was like, vulgar? I don't know what you mean by vulgar. And they just was like, I notice a lot of you have bad language that you say. Is that just something that's part of the job? And I was like, is it part of the job? Do I hear profanity? Yes. Is it part of the job? I don't know. So I know I'm kind of catching you off guard with this one, but what do you guys think and how you've come up or whatnot? Do you think that the use of profanity is like the definition of what we are, the rock and roll of healthcare, and that we are, and we're dirty, and that's just who we are and what we do? Or is that just something, just depends on who you're around kind of thing? I mean, do you think we're profane? Do you think EMS is vulgar?
Look at culture. If we talk about culture, and part of culture is the clothes that you wear, if part of culture is the language that you use, I think it's out there. I think it's out there in a lot of different professions. I think we sometimes say we want to be professionals. We want to be treated like professionals, but I don't know if we truly always act that way.
Terry, I would agree, because you look at other public safety, not just EMS, public safety in general, I think has that
It's a little edgier, little dirtier.
What,
Yeah.
EMS or public safety? Because Walter was saying other public safety.
I think other public safety. I think public safety in general has that. Why it has it, I can't answer that question. Why it has that, but if you look at fire department, look at EMS, look at law enforcement, look at all those public safety, and they all have that same communications. I'm gonna call it communications. They all have that same communications.
Well, most of us in public safety have lights and sirens in our vehicles. It's like the air horn of our vehicles. Get out of our way.
Let me ask all of y'all this then. In your organization or the organizations you have been in, did you ever have an SOG that said no profanity, don't cuss?
I think it depends on where you come from. Like in, some like in the rural areas that I'm more familiar with, it was just, the proper thing to do whenever you got on a call and you were doing work, you were, presenting yourself, you flip that switch as if you were at grandma's dinner table.
Ethics and morals when you went out on that call. Correct.
Right. But now when you get back to the station, it's just you and your partner or whomever, just the crew hanging around the table. That's when a lot of the culture shines in what EMS does.
As long as there's not a student around.
Why? Why would we change for the student around? If it ain't a rule.
Let's use a term, a restaurant term that Kathia has inspired me as we blaze our trail across the country, meeting different amazing people, and Kathia being one of those people. The front of the house versus the back of the house. In the kitchen, what's happening? What's going on in that kitchen? Whether it's restaurants that I've worked in, restaurants in a former life doing a fire inspection or on a call, what's happening in that kitchen versus the front of the house? You've got the hostess, welcome to my restaurant. What? And then if you go into the kitchen, the cook's trying to show you the goat. So
you're on stage versus you're not on stage.
But hold up. But what my thing is if it is in the culture and we have already identified that maybe it's not what we do at grandma's dinner table and it's not right, and we talk about ethics and morals, and we have seen that evolution over time change from tattoos being accepted or hair color being accepted, and that change has the evolution of language also now become acceptable to be that you can talk that way. And is it a bad thing? And what my overarching question is as a leader, as a manager, if you know that you came up in this and this is how things are, and maybe you have a rule against it and maybe you don't. So I've got two questions. Is if you have a rule against it, how often do you enforce it? And if you don't, do you think you need one? And what do you do when you have that employee that comes up fresh out of homeschool that was raised pretty, hard family values and things, and they come to you and say, "Hey, Walter, I don't like the language that I'm hearing, man. I don't like that out there." What do you feel compelled as a leader to do to respond to that?
I think it's very hard to put that in black and white, number one. And the second thing is, I think it's very hard to enforce. Now, does it mean that you have that complaint that comes back that you can't have a conversation with the provider? But I think having a policy for that becomes very hard to enforce. Who is going to enforce it? The person that you have maybe enforcing it may have the more vulgar mouth of anyone, and they're trying to enforce it. How do you enforce that rule at that point in time? I think it's very hard to be able to do. I think that's having a conversation with somebody after the fact, or having some conversation, but I don't know that you can have a rule with that.
I think it's dependent on the context of the cussing. Like, are we expressing a feeling? Are we just telling a story? Are we just trying to get something off our chest? And is it towards somebody? Is it in the wrong I guess, not environment, but with the wrong people around.
Like if I think I'm just talking to my partner and someone else overhears it, kind of
Right.
thing. This was a conversation between Walter and I, and we occasionally cuss, about something toward each other, not at each other, but toward each other, and somebody else overhears it. Right.
Right.
I think that's a problem, and I don't know that the profession. So that just to throw it out there, I think we should never be cussing at all in front of patients, family, public,
No.
anybody that we would perceive as a potential customer, even the nursing staff at the ED and everyone else that we work with. We should not be cussing at any of them, period. Right. But
I think that goes back to your ethics and morals.
But
yes.
why?
But then John
Yes.
says, why are we doing it at all?
So
is what
I
John's
think
trying to
this-
say is why.
this has
why
to
are
do
we
with the
changing?
times. I think this has to do with the
Right.
current times.
Right.
I think this the military. How long has the dudes in the Marine Corps,
Another
the
one. There you go.
Army,
Another group. There you go.
that cuss like a sailor? How old is that term? So I think it's been known for that profession, but we're looked at and viewed a little bit differently. We're in a little bit of a different environment. But I think as it was accepted at some point in time that you cuss like a sailor. That's the Navy. Do we want to continue with the culture that we have in society today? Do we want to continue EMS in that to go in the direction of, oh, you cuss like a paramedic, and then that's the next thing? Is that how we want the profession to be seen?
Well, that doesn't flow as well, but no, nobody wants to be looked at that way.
Do you think doctors and nurses don't cuss?
I know they do.
Right. Do they cuss in front of the patient? Do they
They
cuss
do.
in front of their patients?
There you go.
Correct. And I think this is something as we travel, as we talk with folks in whether it's the classes, the conferences, all the little bits and pieces of things that we do. Sometimes some people think it's cool. I make some 1960s reference, this rebel without a cause, and I degrade them. They're like a rebel without a clue, and they think it's cool. They think it's cool to, oh, F this. They will to put the agency down or to put the profession down. And I think that's some of that lack of professionalism. Treat me like a professional, but I'm not going to act that way. And they think it's cool to denigrate themselves.
So then you're saying profanity is non-professional, then, is what you're saying.
I think it's somebody standing up and saying, hey, you know what? That's not right. And if you read a leadership book, they'll talk about not cussing, or if you cuss or lose your temper, especially if you're a military book, you're doing it because you are driving home a point. It shouldn't be every other word. You shouldn't be Roy Kent. Every other word.
That's what I'm saying. So when I'm coming up, to me, it was selective. It was very selective as to when profanity would be utilized. It was to accentuate some other aspect. I'm angry, so I curse, or I'm trying to drive home a point and I use it as an adjective. That was me 30 years ago coming in. Now, it seems to be that it's just part of the fluent everyday language that I wonder, has the culture now changed to what Mark was alluding to, that that's how they talk? And I guess that's my question as a manager. I hear Walter saying, I don't know that you can write the rule and I don't know how you can enforce it, but you'd certainly handle that phone call if one of our EMS people was to use the F word with an 80-year-old lady taking them to dialysis, right? And what are you enforcing then?
Right.
Professionalism, right?
But what if you don't understand the word? What if sacre bleu, which is
easy. Now, I didn't say anything about your mama.
Hey, I'm just.
I don't even know what you said.
If I am French Canadian, that's oh my gosh, the sacred blue, and I remember when my daughter was little, where I would, one of my coworkers had spent some time overseas and would use the word Scheiße. And I remember, if I dropped something, Scheiße. And now I'm cussing in German. And I remember my daughter doing it one day and saying, hey, you can't cuss. And she was like, I don't know what that word means. And I was like, well, it's a bad word, just another another language? What if the other person, what if they don't understand it?
I think that's a degree of innocence. That's the difference between ignorance and stupidity. Right.
But they're correct. And that's, we create the rule. Some jackwagon out there is going to, it doesn't say what language I can cuss in. It doesn't say what, you know.
I mean, people will go out of their way to learn a different language, to cuss in a different language so nobody understands them.
Is it? I'm now using sign language. You know, it's not bull. It's bull diarrhea now. So I don't
really know what you're doing, but that was weird.
It's cussing in sign language. Hit that like, unsubscribe on the YouTube channel to see my sign language cussing.
I'm going to unsubscribe on the YouTube channel.
Well, and I think y'all are hitting it on the head as well. You know, some of this is, you know, I have heard 16, 17, 15-year-olds use terminology that I would have never used at that age before. So some of those probably think nothing of it, and it's secondhand communications and talking to them, because that's what they're picking up and that's how they're just talking. So, I think professionalism, but yeah, I don't know how you, different than 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago, when I was that age range, and
that age range.
Shut up, Terry. Did not have,
telephones at 5 digits.
You're very close to the same age that I am, so you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I feel like you're 1,000 years older.
Right. So, I think that
Crypt keeper,
that's part of the communications today, but you still just have to be careful and be cautious when you are talking professionally in the public. And, I think, how do you do that? A policy is not going to work, and trying to enforce a policy is not going to work. Sometimes maybe just having some of that conversation with people and have had that conversation before and they not realize it. So, and I'll use Terry and his daughter. She didn't have a clue what she was saying. So I have a child. She doesn't know what she's saying sometimes. She picks up stuff that she hears. She doesn't know right and wrong. And I think that's where, you have to have that conversation.
That, in the words of Depeche Mode, the policy of truth. You have to have the policy of truth.
Don't be quoting Depeche Mode. Look, what I'm saying is, it sounds like we are agreeing that EMS is vulgar, but we haven't defined whether it's unprofessional. It sounds like that the vulgarness of EMS is only defined after the fact. You have to get the complaint to say, well, that was professional. You could have been in the moment and not considered unprofessional till you get a complaint or someone comes up and says, hey, that's not cool. Then you can say, we really can't do it. So here again, we're being reactive versus saying, read the room,
That's what EMS is. EMS is reactive.
So, we've got to create that change somewhere, right? And like we've talked about with a lot of the other things that we would like to see EMS become, it starts in that classroom. That first night of registration of EMT school, if your instructor is in there dropping the F-bomb on the first night and just general lecture and general conversation, oh, it's the cool thing to do because this instructor looks like and sounds like they know what they're talking about. Oh, that's cool. I want to be like that. I want to emulate that. Right. And then when they get onto the truck, they hear the same thing from FTOs. They hear the same thing from these other people. Right. And it's where we have to set that example from day one. I've heard some instructors before that were just so very eloquent and just like set the perfect example of what we would want to see our EMTs and paramedics become. And then there's some that every other word is something out of that 4-letter dictionary.
There's a time and a place for it. At the end of the day, there's a time.
Is it a time and place for it?
I think so. I think there is. I mean, there are times where you're expressing that feeling, and really the best thing for it is maybe the F word. Who knows? Or another word.
Make up new words that are EMS specific, that we make up, that we can say, that only EMS folks know, and that way no one will be offended by it.
Like quiet.
Right.
That's offensive.
It's been a quiet shift.
That is one.
It's been slow.
That is offensive.
What a slow
Hey,
day.
That could be a vulgar word to someone.
That really could be,
It could
depending
be.
on what the provider you say it to.
It could
Right.
be.
Nothing elicits the F word faster than coming into a station and saying, sure has been quiet.
Right. Right.
100%.
There are people
Probably-
that just like, they say the F word or something back to back to back to back. They can't finish a sentence without 5 of them in there. And that's excess. That's unprofessional.
So going back to this person that's asking the questions of like, is EMS vulgar? I guess if I was asking my friends here on the podcast, we'd say we are, but with reason and it's just who we are.
Best friend.
What?
I'm your best friend, remember. It's not your friends, your best friend and friends. Best friend.
And guess.
3,762.
That's right. And guests.
And
right.
yeah, and honored guests.
Honored guest.
Running mate is the preferred title right now.
I'll just refer to you as my partner.
So
Your partner.
So if that is if we're gonna say since it sounds like, because I was prepared for either side of this, so it sounds like we're on board with the whole that it's going to exist and we shouldn't eradicate it. We should accept the fact that it does exist, and now we should train people when to or not to utilize said language. Is that it sounds like that's what everybody seems to be leaning towards or whatnot. And
Is there a lesson plan? Is there a lesson plan for that?
That's my next thing. Is
Page
so
28.
now how
Just saying,
without,
is there a lesson plan for that somewhere?
without being
It's
told,
part of the gap.
because you use the word professionalism, and some people may actually feel like that is not unprofessional to use profanity when they talk. I watched a Congress hearing last week, and they were using language towards the person they were interviewing. And was that unprofessional?
Yeah, that was
Yeah. And so we did talk about that, and to where they would interrupt the person answering the question, but if the person answering the question interrupted the Congress person, then it was, let me finish, stop interrupting me. And
right.
Is that a normalization of deviance, to use a word that we sometimes use? Sorry, Kathia, I cut you off.
No, I don't think I'm saying anything.
Passionate. All right.
I personally, from where, and now we get into what the eyes feel, and my feeling is that profanity is unprofessional, and that when you do it, then you are doing it cognizant of the fact that you could offend someone, right? Same thing as you do with politics, religion, or anything else. When you bring those things up, you have to know that that you are putting yourself out there. Going back to what Mark said about being at grandma's dinner table, I don't go to my mama's house and say that language. I'm not going to do that. I don't use it in my house around my children. Now, why is that? If it's not professional, and that's that reasoning at core. But would I do it around certain people? Would I do it around, and is that being yourself, or is it the influence of, that's why I bring it up. Yeah, that's why I bring it, because if it is those things, and it is indeed wrong because it's not how we were brought up, and we want to impart and impact people based on those ideologies, then why aren't we doing that? Why don't we do that? Mark talked about a mentor getting in the classroom and saying all those things without using those languages and stuff, or using that type of language, could inspire people in a different way. Yet we're reluctant to really say, thou shalt not use that language, or recognize the audience, or read it. Well, why we recognize the audience? If there ain't nothing wrong with it, you should be able to say what you want, say how you feel. And to me,
so do you feel like that should change in EMS?
Well, I think you have to start looking at what Walter talked about, and that is, he says you can't write a rule for it. And I say, is that what we should start looking at? Is, if we're not writing a rule, then where's the lesson plan that says, hey, there's different ways to address these? And we'd certainly address it if it was a complaint because someone used the F word on one of our patients, our little old ladies we took to dialysis. We would be all over somebody saying, you can't use that language. Why? Because it's a profane word. it's unprofessional, So
You can insult somebody without using bad language
Sure,
with just
yeah.
the look you give them.
Absolutely. You
Yeah.
So how
give
do
it to me
you?
all the time. I'm offended 100% of the time.
So I would even, just to kind of, just another random thought I just had. Some of this seems to me comes back to just normal human behavior. As human beings, we don't naturally come up with the ability to communicate well. And, whenever we don't find an easy way to communicate something, we replicate something that we've heard many times before. So if I were to say, man, you done a really good job on that call earlier. Hell yeah. Not thank you. Yeah. Do you have is there any other feedback? There's more intelligent conversation that could come up other than just, I think
Attaboy.
that's
Hell
that.
yeah.
Yeah. That hell yeah. Or, something crazy just happened.
See, y'all are doing it right here. Y'all are doing it right here
See,
on the podcast. Y'all are doing it
for
right here on the
educational
podcast.
purposes. But you see what I'm saying? Yeah, that's where, we don't really know how to express ourselves. We don't really know how to communicate well. So we're going to replicate probably the thing that we've seen more oftentimes than not, or we see these things on television. We hear these things in movies. It's just the easy thing to do. It's the easy way to communicate without continuing the conversation, without really further or more complex thought to continue that conversation. Am I crazy?
Yeah.
Maybe we need to expand our vocabulary in EMS.
Use your words.
Use your words. Yeah. I feel like we're going to toddler age at that point. Use your words now.
Yeah, use your or express yourself. Don't repress yourself. I think it's a values-based. I think it's a values-based thing. If you say be compassionate with your patients, and then you're dropping F-bombs at them, or you're saying, what is all of this stuff? I don't know though. If I start to use, shut the front door. I don't know. I'm not saying the words, but the same meaning behind it. Or, whiskey tango foxtrot. We all know what that means.
What's that?
Ding dang. Yeah. Yeah, whiskey tango dumpster house. I think if you move towards that values based, and we are you being compassionate or are you being respectful? Because you might not have that policy, whether it's in county policy or in your agency or your department, but if you're talking being respectful, being compassionate, what the F is your problem? Probably not respectful, probably not compassionate.
So here's a question that I'll go back and ask. And let's see. All of us, Kathia, I can't answer for. Conduct unbecoming of a county, city, state employee. Define that.
Oh, I've been dinged for that actually.
Define that. Define that.
From a Facebook post.
Suck it.
Connection is breaking up. I couldn't hear your
Right. So I mean that's so to define it. So to define that, because that's what people get dinged for is that conduct unbecoming. So where is that defined at as well? Would that, and I know you want to talk, shut up for a minute. So so when how do you find, because somebody may say, as John would say, this person come up to him and said EMS is vulgar. Well, the county manager may say that's conduct unbecoming of a county employee or a city employee or whatever. So go ahead, Terry. You want to talk now? Go ahead.
The Supreme Court talked about this with pornography in their ruling on pornography. And part of their ruling was, we can't tell you what it is, but we know it when we see it. And so conduct unbecoming, you might be able to give some examples of some things that are conduct unbecoming, but when you see it.
It's a bucket. It's a catch-all.
It is. It's a catch-all.
It is.
Go ahead, John. Give us your final thoughts on this. We know you're dying there to tell us.
I think that when you get up into the officer level position, as you go up higher, you're supposed to be the ultimate mentor. So maybe you don't. Maybe you try to be the one to show the example of that. And so when we always point to FTOs and say we want them to be those, I just wonder if maybe we should throw a little bit of that, control our vulgarity Because Mark was talking about something earlier in this episode about, when I might be talking to someone else and someone else overhears it. Let's not forget how sexual harassment is defined. It doesn't have to be involved in the conversation. It can be overheard. So vulgarity can still offend me from that aspect of it. So I just think maybe we've ignored it. Maybe we've discarded it, or maybe we just fell into the loop of always using it ourselves. And I just, I don't know. That's why I say
Here you go. Here you go. I'm gonna throw the flag. That was a post-it note flag.
Oh,
I don't really disagree with that, because I feel like as you move higher, your self-control for when and how you use profanity, if that's your thing, if that's how you express it, you gotta have that limitation as you move up higher.
What happens when your FTO is the one that cusses the most?
right. That's what I mean. And I think
That's why I said I gotta throw that flag there,
And
because they might be the
I'm
one.
saying that from somebody who cusses a lot. I am the queen of F-bombs. And it's a choice that's made when it comes out of my mouth at the end of the day.
Terry and I promise that in 2025, once we're voted in, that we will eradicate profanity.
On the flag again.
Look,
I done
Walter,
threw it on the
we can't
floor.
see your flag, Walter. We can't see your
I
flag.
done threw it on the floor here. I done threw it on the floor.
As we tour this great state, this nation,
Yep.
there's just amazing people that we meet at the many different places that we stop at. And
Mark, this would probably be a good time to have music playing.
Mm-hmm.
This would be a good time to have music playing. Yeah.
it would be
Really
the
vibing.
things that bring us together are greater than the things that divide us. And my
Terry, in the
partner and I-
mountains,
Is this where we drop the confetti?
Ooh.
Terry, in
Yes.
the mountains, I noticed that up there along the parkway and stuff, they have park rangers. At the Outer Banks, do they have shark rangers?
Should.
There's this park. More people are killed by horses.
More horses are
More
killed
people
by
are-
humans.
More horses are killed by humans than by other horses.
Okay.
Fake news.
Murderer.
I don't know what the you're talking about.